Hey all. Well, it's November the 1st, and we are now staring right in the face the next couple of months of Thanksgiving and Christmas and all the busyness that has to do with that season. And as I was thinking about that, I was reflecting on this term that you maybe are familiar with called getting ahead of the curve. It was a term coined in the 1980s by businesses that wanted to talk about how they were ahead of their competitors or ahead of the industry that they were in. Lagging behind the curve meant you were reacting and you were kind of behind everybody else. But most of us have used that term at different times, saying, I've got to get ahead of the curve. And what we really say is we want to get prepared ahead of time for what's coming. And I began to think of this in terms of the season that's coming up these next 2 months. Some of us are proactive people. We like to look ahead and plan. Others are reactive people. They just kind of respond to the things that are in front of them. But I wonder if it would be helpful for us to be ahead or get ahead of the curve. And I don't mean it in the traditional sense, but more in the sense of what story do you want to tell when the next 2 months is over? Most of us have a picture in our head of what the holiday season looks like, of the things we would like to see happen. And yet so often when we get to January 1st, we think, whew, it's all done. And you know what? We had all these great plans and they didn't materialize. There was things we wanted to happen and some of them happened and some of them didn't. It's now that we get to decide what that story looks like. Now, this is not just about being a planner. Some people are planners and some are not. This is not about calendaring. This isn't about just being a super organized person. But there's a process of getting ahead of the curve that hopefully you'll find helpful. It's helped me in the past, and I plan on applying it this year as well. And it's kind of a top-down, general towards the specific kind of thing. And it kind of begins like this. If you want to have a good story to tell, you have to look ahead at what's ahead of you and say, well, what are the things that are most important to me? These are fairly general. They're not really specific in terms of dates and details. But they could be things like, in the next 2 months, I want to make sure that I have some quality family time. Or in the next 2 months, I want to make sure that there's certain relationships that we kind of want to lean into because we want to make sure that we get a chance to connect with them. Maybe it's I want to have an opportunity to minister well or to connect with God in new ways in the middle of these seasons. And what you do is you put those down. They kind of become the filter through which you view the next 2 months. I would encourage you, if you do that, write them down. Write down. It doesn't take long. Just write, if I could have everything, if I was going to tell this story, I would like to be able to say, man, we had great time with family, or we were able to spend time as a couple, or we were able to minister and really make a difference in our community. Just what are those things? Then that leads you to level 2, which is, okay, well now the things that we plan, we filter through that. And those are things you got to put on the calendar or they won't happen. These are things like, we want to take family time, so we're going to pick a day when we go to Ocean City to see the lights, or to Longwood, or we're going to have times where we put aside to go work in a particular ministry or get together with friends. And you put those things on the calendar. It doesn't have to fill everything up, but you say, since this is the story I want to tell, these are things I want to do. And then lastly are the things you just react to. They're the things that other people put on your calendar. They're the things that come up at church, or they come up just in your conversations and people say, hey, let's do this, or you could do this, or work all of a sudden gets crazy busy and they're like, well, we need you to do this. And now you take all of those things and you filter them and you say, does this contribute to the story that I want to tell? It doesn't have to be really formal, but if we really want to get ahead of the curve for this season, so we can get to January 1st and say, man, it was such a good year. The things that I wanted to accomplish, I did. The things we wanted to find out as a family, or the things we wanted to relate as a family, happened. Then it just involves, just pause it now, well ahead, to say, this is the story I want to tell. May that work for you. Hopefully, it works for me. Till next time.